Court to the cloud. So, you guys, this is Earl Jones, the host of the Earl Jones Show. I am so privileged and honored and so grateful to have a person that I consider to be a mentor, a person that I met in 2018 in the landmark wisdom course, and she just blew all of us away. You still might, and her name is Meredith S. Wiley. She has a law degree and she has a master's in public administration. Now, the biggest reason why I've invited Meredith to come onto the show, because you guys know my routine, honey. We talk about insurance, we talk business. You guys also know that I invite, leaders in the community, business, and all that good stuff to come on and talk about like what's up, what's going on, how they are making things happen. And Meredith, she is published. Let me just run down a few things. So she wrote an article called Scared Sick, The Role of Childhood Trauma in Adult Disease. Actually, she wrote a book back in 2012, right?
Right.
That was a book, right? And then she wrote another publication that was published in the Atlantic Monthly Press called Ghosts from the Nursery, Tracing the Roots of Violence. Then in 2012, she wrote an article co-authored with William Christensen. Yes. Christensen, Keeping the Momentum Going. New York counties are shifting kids out of high-cost juvenile facilities and to what works better to cut crime. So she's a really good expert when it comes to, I don't like to use the word juvenile, but young people and the challenges that young people face in places where there's an economic impact and disparity. Like, she is a huge, huge advocate. And right now, what Meredith is working on in her beautiful age of 75, she is the editor of a weekly publication called The Children's Movement. And every week she sends out e-blast newsletters to people, and we'll include a link for that, the whole 9 yards. Meredith has done so much in New York and up in Fresno and across the country. One time she was sharing with me how she was selected to work with a politician that was running for office. Right, Meredith?
Well, I was actually chief of staff to the Speaker of the House in Oregon.
There you have it, people.
And so, but prior to that, I ran a statewide candidate election service and process and everything. And we took over the House of Representatives for the first time in 40 years. And I became the staff to the Speaker. And that was where I got involved in the children and family issues.
Oh.
Yeah, so prior to that, I'd been involved in a lot of environmental stuff, land use planning, water law. Then I got into politics. I ran for state senate in 1982, and I won the primary, and then I lost the general. But then that got me involved in politics, and then that took me to the Speaker's office. And so it's been like this progression, one thing to another, to another.
To another, making each day and moment count. Now, the reason why I brought Meredith on the show, because of that, and she was sharing on a seminar that we were both participating in about the impact of COVID-19 on the youth in her neck of the woods of California in Fresno. And it moved all of us that we were just like, whoa, because all you hear about of COVID-19 is just, the cases and all that other stuff. And every now and then, you might hear I haven't heard anybody talk about the impact of COVID-19 of children. So I wanted to get Meredith on the show to talk about this, to talk about what she's seeing, what efforts are happening, how is she making a difference, plus share some of Meredith's insights and other aspects of life. So Meredith, let's go back to, well, first of all, thank you for coming. I'm so excited to have you.
Oh, this is very cool. You and I love each other. Was love at first sight.
It was love at first sight. I had no idea that when I met you, that you would be one of these people that I go, okay, now what would Meredith say? Because you're just so real and you're just so raw, but you're not afraid to like talk about the dirty stuff. ever since you shared in the wisdom course about your time up in New York, that is when I really was like, wow, take us back to that time period in New York where you were, oh, I just forgot. Hold on. I have your resume in front of me, but that you were working with youth at risk back then?
I was the state director of a national nonprofit called Fight Crime, Invest in Kids, which then eventually evolved into the Council for Strong America. And we worked with law enforcement leaders. So our members were chiefs of police, sheriffs, district attorneys, and crime survivors. And so we had probably 95% of the state sheriffs were members, over 160 or 170 police, most of the DAs. And what we did was we looked across the nation and the world, looking for longitudinal, rigorous research, evaluating services and programs for children and families, that one of their showings was that it would significantly reduce crime with really high risk populations of kids.
Mm-hmm.
And we worked then in the policy arena. We used our law enforcement leaders and our crime survivors as spokespeople. So we would do the research, we'd write up the reports, we would give them coachings and briefings, and then we would take them into all these meetings, legislative hearings, meetings with governor, and key legislators, county leaders, talking about the crime prevention value of high quality services to children and families. So it was an unusual messenger. So you expect, for instance, for a teacher or a social worker or someone that runs a nonprofit children's agency, you expect them to be advocates.
Right.
You don't expect the chief of police and the sheriff to come into a legislative hearing with all their badges and their hats, and they're coming in and looking at these guys and saying, you need to be investing in this preschool program, or you need to be investing in this home visitation program, or you need to be investing in this after school program as a matter of crime prevention.
Right.
So the idea was you can pay now or you can pay me later, was sort of the message that they had for these guys. And so it was an unusual voice and messenger for the importance of quality programs and finding those programs and actually promoting the ones that we knew really do work, that had research that they show that they work.
And now when you take that experience, because we're going to stay on this and open this up just a little bit, but when you take that experience of what you started and created, and I assume still is going on today, and you look at what's going on in America with youth and all that stuff, like, where do you see, like, we've gotten off track? Are we still on track? Are we just like every man's for themselves? Like what is your take on like youth today and crime? Because it seems like every time you turn around, you're seeing video after video after video of kids get into trouble, get into fights, and all sorts of stuff.
Well, it's infuriating, frustrating, but also I can't give up because we have made progress in certain areas. And so it just absolutely frustrates me to see that we know a lot about what to do. We know it works. We know if we do it right, we've got the evidence, we've got, years of longitudinal research and wonderful people that have been working on these things, not just me. I was basically promoting the work of other people, which I had no vested interest in other than good policy. And so to know what to do and then not invest in it is just, to me, completely frustrating. But by the same token, there's been a lot of progress forward. So in the area, for instance, an area called restorative justice, and a move to do everything we can to keep kids in their communities, to invest with them and engage with them in effective ways when they first get into trouble, keep them out of the system, for instance. Those sorts of things. And some of the after school programs and some of the things like boys and girls programs and, those sorts of things. We know they work. And so, but now everybody's so completely distracted. Of course, there's no money for anything. And we're facing absolutely gargantuan budget cuts.
Yes.
In the face of the money that we gave to the millionaires billionaires, 3 years ago. That was money that could have very well gone for a lot of these things and really made a huge difference in the long run. So it's an ongoing, never-ending discussion. Feel like, but I can't give up.
Right.
It's like in the face of all that, it's you can't give up.
But what drives you not to give up besides the data? You know that it works. What else is there? Because you're in your 70s. Most people in your 70s are retiring. You are now talking about writing a second book, like third book. What is driving you to be so?
I have 5 grandkids. I have 2 great grandkids. And I look at the world that they're going to be left with. And I just want them to know, if nothing else, they know I did everything I could, that I cared about them, not only them, but their friends and their kids across the nation, the kids around the world. What is there to do except what you believe to be what you can do?
Right.
So I've done what I can do, and I know that. And some days I don't even feel like getting out of bed. I just want to pull the covers over my head. No, but
right.
It's like, but then I think about it. I think about, what world are we leaving them? And when my kids look back and when my grandkids look back and they say to me, what did you do about whatever? And my grandson here, he's my 3rd grandchild. He's now just turned 24 here in Fresno, and I'm so proud of him. He has co-founded with a friend of his here in Fresno a Central Valley chapter of Sunrise, which is it's a major environmental movement that kids are joining together across the nation to, particularly in light of like the new Green Deal and all these kinds of things, which are things that I've cared about for a long time. So my grandson Lewis is stepping into that role, and I like to think maybe I had a little bit to do with that.
It's possible because I will confess, we grandchildren, we do look to our grandparents for leadership.
Yeah. So, the legacy is getting passed on. And so anyway, I don't know what to do other than what I can do. And if I didn't do what I can do, I would feel like I was falling short and had failed in my, I don't want to say duty, but my idea of what a citizen is, of what community is about, of my role in that, what I can contribute to that. And all I can do is what I can do, and hope there's a lot of other people that are doing the same things.
Right.
They're in their own way. They're doing what they can do, like what you're doing. They're doing what they can do to contribute to the world around them. And if enough of us do that, that's what it's going to take to pull it out. It's going to come from the bottom up. Clearly, it's not going to come from the top down.
It's funny that you say that, because I was just thinking about shooting a video about that, that it's going to come from the bottom up, that, in order for the world to change, we, the people, must take action and hold the leaders that we've elected and are appointed accountable for the decisions that they make, to include, removing them from office, regardless they have a lifetime appointment of that office. But I also believe that it takes grassroots efforts to change things. For me, the thing that I would love to get involved in would be changing of our judicial system. I strongly feel that it is too top heavy in racial disparities.
So my suggestion to you, I'll send you some stuff, darling, on restorative justice.
Yes.
And you can find out there's a lot of stuff happening in the Bay Area around that, and has been for a number of years, and some really good people working on that you could link in with and see what might be there that you can contribute to what's going on around that.
Yes.
It's an empowering way of relating to kids. It's the way they're dealt with heals a lot of trauma, empowers them, The mistake that they've made, it'll be a first crime probably, and probably it won't be a violent crime, but it'll be like, whatever.
Right.
Drugs or
breaking and entering or something.
Breaking and entering or, stealing something, shoplifting or, disorderly conduct or whatever. But that experience is dealt with in a way that it creates an opportunity for them to learn and grow. And so the mistake becomes, with the proper supports around it, becomes an opportunity for them to turn their lives around and to use that as a developmental opportunity, which most white kids, if we treated most of the Black kids with second chances like we do with a lot of the white kids.
Now you're getting into something now, honey.
I'm serious about it. It would be, so it's like having every child treated the way I would want my kid to get treated if they got caught.
Correct. Exactly. That's the other reason why I want you to come on the show, because you have the credentials. I mean, people like Meredith has her degree she has a master's degree from Harvard. She has her law degree from Willamette University. She has her campaign planning management background degree from American Campaign Academy. I mean, like, her list of publications, if you can see this, right? Like, she has been working in this. Community service goes all the way back from when she was with the United Nations Environmental Program, Parent-Child Home Program, Nurse Family Partnership Program. Then she was with the New York State Task Force on Juvenile Reentry, New York State Task Force for Transformed Juvenile Justice, and then she was with the New York State Children's Cabinet as an advisory council. So I'm talking to a woman who has seen probably more battle on this front lines than anybody that I know. So you really have seen the disparity, inequality of the justice system as relates to Black and white children.
Well, and I would just say to you, if you were to say to me, pick one thing that I would get involved in if I wanted to be making a real difference, picking something that we really know works, it would be get yourself involved in the restorative justice movement. The other thing I would say to you is the one thing that kids really, really, really benefit from is a good mentor. Make a difference in the life of one child, be a big brother. You can't be a big sister, but you probably what the heck, right?
Yes.
Be a big brother, or get involved in some way in the boys club, the Boys and Girls Club. Also, Boys and Girls Club has great research showing the effectiveness of what they've done over the years with their programs and their kids. And so look to see what works. Like, look, I can send you some information on where the research has gone. I'm a big believer in looking at not just good ideas, and those are a dime a dozen, and everybody always thinks they have to start something new.
Right.
Say, go where we already know we have evidence, we have a lot of work that's been done, we know it's effective, we know it works. Put your money there, put your efforts there, put your attention there, put your heart there, pick one of those things and get involved.
So you'll send that, and I'll make sure to include it into the video link. And so thank you for that, but I wanted to continue to open this thing up because you're in Fresno and you shared about the impact of COVID-19 on the education system there and the kids that do not have resources in order to survive this. So I want you to talk about that, open up, like, how did you get involved with that? Let's start there. How did you get involved in that?
Well, I got involved in Fresno when I thought I was retiring. So I was living in New York and my daughter was here. She's she works with the California Teachers Association, and my son-in-law is a librarian at the Chowchilla Women's Prison. So they're here, and 3 out of my 5 grandkids are here. And I'm from the West Coast originally, so I thought, okay, I'm going to retire and I'll move close. Like her 2 youngest twins were 8 at the time, and they were growing up. And I thought, you know what? When I retire, I'm going to go be close to my family in Fresno. Not knowing anything about here at all. except for her and her family. And so when I moved here, there was a lawyer here who had been, when Ghosts from the Nursery first came out in 1997, he was an attorney for the Fresno County Children's Services and stuff, and he represented.
And Ghosts from the Nursery, just so that you guys know, it is one of Meredith's publications.
Yeah, 2 books.
It's 2 books, yes.
We have 2 books and then lots of publications beyond that, articles and stuff, but
yes,
2 books. It was the first book, and it came out in 97. And Howard Watkins here in Fresno was an attorney here, and he got all excited about it. And he'd been in touch with us forever, sending things and communications back and forth. So here I was up in upstate New York, and my co-author was in Portland, and we would hear from Howard, you know, every once in a while he'd see something. Did you see this article? And he would send us stuff, or he would send legislator letters, and he'd send us a copy and say, I sent this to the California legislators. So anyway, so he's been like, and I'd never met him. So when I moved here, Howard found out that I was moving here, and he got all excited.
How did you find out that you were moving there?
I'm not quite clear. I don't know. I think I may have just sent him a note and said, hey, Howard, because we'd heard from him for all these years, and, you know, hey, Howard, I'm coming. I'd love to have coffee with you or something, get to, you know, meet you.
Right.
And so he found out I was moving here, and that was the end of the whole thing. He dragged me to all these meetings and introduced me to all these people. And so I got here, and quite honestly, if I was just retiring, I ain't the shuffleboard type or the card playing type, you know. Yeah. So I got involved in all these different, you know, all these things that were going on here. There's a wonderful, I've never seen anything in all the work that I've done and all the years I've been involved. I have never seen anything like the collaboration and the participation that exists in Fresno. It's astonishing. So we have the highest, almost 40%, 39.9% of the kids in Fresno live in poverty. Mm-hmm. Huge challenges. And 60% of the kids in the Fresno Unified School District are Hispanic. So there's lots of issues around that with undocumented workers and all the stuff that goes with all of those issues in the farm country, and lots of disparities. But our main minority here is Hispanic. We also have Hmong, we have Black, we have, I don't know, 5 or 6 other different languages that are spoken here at the school. Right. So I got involved with that, and over time, you know, they asked me to come do a presentation, and so I got involved in that, and then I got on the boards and all that kind of stuff. And when the COVID hit, I have never seen anything like it in my life. We have put together through the community foundation here, the Central Valley Community Foundation, mm-hmm. combined with United Way, along with 3 other different, the county school district, have put together this weekly collaborative call. And last time we had almost 500 people on this call. So, you know, community-based organizations, and they're the seniors of it. I mean, it's not just, it's like the leaders.
Right.
We are working on all of these different pieces and issues, and the health department's on the call and that. And so I'm involved with the team. There's about 9 of us or 10 of us that weekly work together to design what that call is going to be. And then we have a follow. It's Thursday mornings for an hour. Mm-hmm. And then on Friday, we follow it up and design the next week's call about what we're going to cover. And so we've covered all kinds of things, particularly like with the one that you were really interested in, what they call the distance learning.
Yes, it's distance learning, yeah.
And so I'm on, they have subcommittees of about eight different groups, and talk, you know, economic security and childcare and you know, food security. So there's all these different subgroups that are then working separately, that then come back to the big call and bring all this information to all these people. And these people are the ones that are in a position to make decisions, good decisions, and about how resources are going to get allocated and who's going to do what. And exercising a lot of collaboration to maximize what resources are out there and what we can do to really support families. And so that's what we've been working on.
Got it.
The schools are, my daughter works she taught for 12 years as a teacher, middle school teacher, and then got a law degree and then started working for the California Teachers Association. And so I have seen kind of a little bit of the education world from her eyes, but it wasn't anything that I'd really had most of my experience has been in really early childhood and juvenile stuff that I worked on when I was in New York State. So the juvenile sort of delinquent or kids off the track populations of kids. So it was astonishing to me. Like, example, one of the things that came up in the conversation is 20% of the kids have just plain disappeared. They can't reach them.
You had said that, like,
no, they can't. Like, and it's things like parents' phones have been cut off, or they're living in a rural area where the internet, even if they could afford it, which most of them cannot, it's not accessible. It doesn't. The service doesn't exist.
Right.
And so all of the things of trying to figure out, plus just the whole thing with distance learning and learning by computer and all of that is astonishing. It was a whole world for me. It was just like, oh my God, I had no idea. And so you have areas where some of the schools in the more affluent areas, the kids are getting calls from their teachers.
Yes.
Other areas, they're not getting called. And so it depends on the teacher, it depends on but everybody's struggling with how can we do a better job with this. And so people stepped up, they donated money for providing them with, with the tablets, the laptops. But then you have kids, for instance, one time we were on one call and one of the women said, she said, it just broke my heart. She said, I went out to visit the home and they're living in a trailer, a single mom and 4 kids. And they gave them like packets, like school packets. She said, they don't have a space to put the packets all out for all the kids to do their homework. There's no room. There's just no physical space. So things like that you wouldn't even think about. All of a sudden, the disparities are in our face. And then you've got whole areas. One of the things that's been of great concern here is the failure of reporting of domestic violence has gone up 81% increase in reports. Just, in the last couple of months. We had the sheriff on the call one day and she was telling us but the problem, that's bad enough, but they weren't coming at all from the Hispanic community. And so people are afraid to call. They're afraid to call that ICE is going to show up, that someone's going to get in trouble. So you had this huge spike, but completely underreported because we have a huge Hispanic population and there weren't any calls coming in at all from Hispanic homes.
Okay, so let me make sure. So 20% of the kids just disappeared.
Yeah, well, and they're still trying to find them. So there's a lot of effort and work going on that. But yes, they couldn't reach them for one reason or another.
Then the spike in domestic violence is up by 81%, but yet there's still
underreporting, totally. Underreporting of Hispanic.
Right, because we are so afraid of ICE coming in and
showing up on the doorstep, and then you're in trouble.
Correct.
If anybody in the house at all has any sorts of immigration issues at all, and they're not citizens, even if they're green cards at this point.
Right. It seems like even people with green cards are not protected.
No, they're not protected. Or if they have a green card and someone in the house does not. No, it is utterly appalling. And when you and I first met, that was when the first weekend that we were together, I don't know if you remember how upset I was.
Oh, you were very upset about it.
About the cages, that the kids were in the cages. And that was starting. And then I wrote the editorial, the op-ed, and that got all published and everything. But that's still going on. We've still got kids down on the border.
In cages.
On the floor in Mylar blankets.
Yes.
And they're getting COVID.
Mm-hmm. And then we talked about the fact that the kids in the schools, the packets that you mentioned, that they don't have enough space to even put out the packets.
And that's just one of the examples of, and then you've got a mom that's got 2 jobs and 4 kids and no clue as to how to even begin, you know, they're putting as much as they can in Spanish, but no experience with any of that. And that's true for all the parents. I mean, all the parents are struggling.
Right.
Even the best of them are struggling.
Right.
But for those families in particular, you've got a mom or a mom and dad that are working a job or 2 jobs, high risk, front line, coming home every night, scared to death they're going to make their kids sick, you know, that kind of stuff. Plus the whole thing about schools, there hasn't been any school since the beginning of March. And that was another example of how that played out. So on Friday afternoon, I can't even remember, I was like the 8th of March or 9th of March or 10th or something like that. The schools at Fresno Unified announced that there would be no school starting Monday, Friday at 4. And all of a sudden I get all these phone calls and these people are saying, we've got to do something. And I said, what are you talking about? They said, well, Monday morning, there's no school. We got to get a bunch of people together. We got to figure out what we're going to do. I said, what do you mean? And they said, well, on Monday morning, we have 60,000 children in Fresno Unified School District that get their breakfast and their lunch every day throughout the week out of the school lunch feeding program. And a lot of the schools actually had backpacks that they would pack on Friday and send them home for the weekend so the kids have food on the weekend.
Right.
All of a sudden, it's Friday afternoon and there's nothing in place. And Monday morning, we're going to have 60,000 hungry children that aren't going to have breakfast and lunch. So, you know, it's because the system isn't there. It isn't like anybody did it deliberately, but it's just the system isn't there.
Right.
So we spent the whole weekend trying to figure out, and there was a federal regulation that we were looking at that said, you absolutely cannot give the meal to anybody except the qualifying child. So, you know, because I guess they were afraid of fraud or whatever. So the regulations were the parent or nobody could pick up that meal except for the child that it was intended for. And
so the parents had to stop what they were doing and bring the kids to school to pick up the food?
Supposedly, but we all decided we were just going to break the law. You know, so along about Sunday morning, we said, oh, I'm not even going to say what we said, but we said it began with an F and ended in a K. And it was like, we're going to give. So it ended up about 3 weeks later, there was all the falderall and everything, and they ended up finally changing their regulations. But we broke the law for probably a couple, 3 weeks by, you know, letting the parents come and pick up the food or letting an adult come and get the food for the kids. And we also quit asking anybody. If you showed up, you got the meals. You know, we didn't make everybody prove and like all this stuff. We just didn't have time to deal with it. So if you showed up and said you needed the meals, you got them.
Right.
So those sorts of things have been smoothed out a bit, but there's still issues like going into summer now and normally, you know, figuring out what we're going to do in the summer with the kids and the food. And so there's a whole committee that works on just meals for children, food for families.
Food for the family. But the other thing that you talked about too is that the COVID-19 has also brought up the fact that that some of the kids don't have access to the technology to even do their homework.
Correct.
And you had shared that you guys were trying to come up with a way to make that happen. Can you talk about that?
Well, they're still working on it. There's a whole committee of us that are working on that, and they're doing things like we've gotten the school. They've come up with a lot of money, not a lot of money, but money to buy the technology. You know, they had households where the kids were using mom's phone, but if you have 3 kids, you know, and one phone, each kid needs their own laptop or tablet. And so they're working on that. And then now they're working on putting in place, creating hotspots using the school buses and going out into neighborhoods that don't have the access to the internet. They're working on setting that up so that they can go out to certain areas at certain periods of time and everyone knows when the buses are going to come and the kids can then log on, you know, that kind of stuff. So there's all kinds of creativity taking place, but Earl, the collaboration to create it. I'm sitting on these phone calls every week, and I am just in awe of the people here and the difference that the people here are making. And
Which goes back to what you said. It's going to be it's going to be from the ground up.
Ground up. And parent involvement. There's a couple of organizations here that have been very, very good over the last 3 or 4 years pre-COVID. And thank goodness they've been doing what they've been doing, but they've been organizing community voices. There's one called Every Neighborhood Partnership, and then there's another one called Go Public Schools Fresno. And they've been working for a number of years now, probably at least 2 or 3 years, or maybe even a little longer, on bringing the grassroots, local community. And so things like Every Neighborhood Partnership, for instance, they've created what they're calling little free libraries. So they've gotten all these books donated, and they have all these little stations all around different neighborhoods, and they have a map up online, and it tells you where you can go get free books for your kids. And I've created with our weekly newsletter, Our Children This Week, which I'll send you, we created a new section of it called Resource Watch.
Okay.
We divided up about 5 different categories, and every time I hear a new resource that sounds valuable, I'll fit it in a category. So people are looking, for instance, with the distance learning, there's all kinds of information on everything from Sesame Street's programs to all kinds of tools that are out there that different people provide. And so I've been collecting all this stuff and just putting it into these different categories so that you can go online. There's one whole section called for parents and caregivers. Things to do with your kids at home, fun things to do, games to do, stuff that's online that's fun to do, and all kinds of different educational and support tools for parents that have kids at home that are driving them nuts. Seriously, it's like, so.
I know I should laugh because I'm single. My youngest nieces and nephews are back home in St. Louis with their parents. But when I have them, I get them maybe for a weekend or for a day or whatever, right? And I'm just like going, if I was a parent, I'd be like, oh my God, like, because I don't think people really realize. I don't think till COVID-19 happened, people just took sending their kids to school for granted.
Oh yeah.
And we just assumed that resources. Yeah, that there's all these resources, but then COVID-19 happens, and you find out we really got caught with our pants down as a country. COVID-19 really showed us how unprepared we are for a pandemic, and I can only
how unappreciative we've been.
And unappreciative.
The pieces that have been in place that have really supported our family life, and the same thing's true even with the churches and the faith community. That's not something I've been involved in, but I know people who are, and they make a huge contribution.
They do make a huge contribution. Churches they make a huge contribution. But this whole situation with COVID-19 makes me wonder, like, what would happen if we did ever have another Pearl Harbor, where we were attacked, or if the circumstances were really much greater. There seems to be more protest over wearing a mask than there is about coming together to make sure that we have resources so that we as a nation abundantly thrive through this pandemic. That's just the way that it occurs to me.
Yep.
And so I want to move over now, because you've talked about the children's movement, and I know this started back in 2017. Was this something that you started, or did you start this?
No, it was pre-me. So the children's movement was up and running here in Fresno. It started in Florida, I don't know, maybe 15 years ago. And then some people from here, it was pre my even living here. So when I came here, it was already up and going, and they do quarterly breakfasts where they bring middle-level managers and stuff together to work on different kinds of issues and priorities and all that kind of stuff. And then there's a second layer now called the Children C2C Cradle to Career, which is the higher level management, decision makers and that kind of stuff. And they're really connected with each other. So there's a whole body of people here, like with the C2C, I think there's like 90 different sectors, different organizations and education and law enforcement and a whole variety of different kinds of people that they bring together. And then the children's movement is sort of like the managers that make things happen.
Uh-huh.
So they'll look at, children's movement looks like at like issues and stuff that are going on in the field by people that are delivering the services or working on the services or the design of it, all that. And then that gets fed up to C2C where the decisions get made. So there's this ongoing linkage between the two pieces, which is very impressive. And now the third piece that we were starting to focus on prior to COVID, and we'll get back to it when things settle down a bit, was then to bring in the community voice. So bring in all three levels, community management, and then the senior executive level in these different activities that then link with each other and inform each other about what needs to happen. And what
you're serving as the editor. And as the editor, are you talking about the publication piece? Or
yeah, so the editor, the children's movement decided, that's just 3 years. So it'll be 3 years in August that I was asked to do that. And so the board decided what they wanted to do was to do it's a policy digest.
Oh.
And so we look at, and it was created initially, the Resource Watch, the fourth piece of it was just added beginning of March. But before that, we had a section called News Watch, which I find stories, different kinds of stories and stuff that are important for policy implications and what's going on with kids. And then we had Agenda Watch, which I monitor the monthly agendas of the county supervisors, the county board of education, and something called First Five, which is a low, it's a.
Did you see my face?
No.
Because I made this face, I was like, oh my God, because, I didn't know that there was organizations out there that did this type of stuff. Like having this conversation with you is like,
I don't think I don't know if anybody else is doing exactly this.
Right.
And then, so we have Policy Watch or Agenda Watch, which I'm monitoring monthly what's going on. And if I put, here's the agenda, here's the date. And if there's agenda number 7 item, and here's agenda number 9 item, and there'll be people that are interested in that. And then they know they can call or they can go send a letter or, do whatever, take actions if they want to. And then we have Policy Watch, which we have our members give us legislation that they're interested in getting passed or defeated. And so they give the bill numbers, and then I have a little blurb about there, and then I monitor those, what's going on, if it goes to a committee meeting or it goes to, gets passed in the House and goes to the Senate, or the governor's going to, whatever. So if there's any change in it, it'll get an update status anytime anything happens. And then the last one is called Event Watch. And so that's major events in the community that are happening that people might want to know about, a little blurb about what it is, and then the access to it. Click on here if you want to register, get more information or whatever. So it's a policy digest. It just keeps everybody updated kind of on what's going on, what matters, what's important, what's there to pay attention to. And then you need, if I want to find out the date of something, I think, okay, I can just go to Event Watch and it'll be there on that date.
Right. Now, Meredith, wow, just amazing. Because I still can't believe you're in your 70s. I just cannot believe, because we have covered a high level overview of your career. You're supposed to retire. You get to Fresno. You've been in Fresno now for what, 14 years?
Oh, no. Came here and came to the Central Valley in January of 2013. So
7 years.
You
basically moved to California in the same year. You're in January, me in August. And I feel like you have literally recreated a third career in about 7 years.
A third phase anyway.
Huh?
a third phase.
Because you published your first book was published. When was your first book published?
97.
Second book was published
2012.
And now you're talking about writing a third book.
Then we did a second edition of the first book in 2013. We did an update of the first book in conjunction with the Newtown one-year anniversary of the Newtown Massacre.
Let's talk about that update edition of the Newtown Massacre. What inspired you to even write the book in the first place? Let's go there.
Well, the first book, Ghosts from the Nursery, was when I was chief of staff to the speaker. My boss, a conservative Republican male, and I've left the party long ago, so that isn't even a discussion anymore. But at the time, there was a wing of the Republican Party that I was perfectly happy to be in, and which, no longer true. That might make some of your viewers mad. We won't go there. So when I was running the second, so it took us 2 election cycles to take the majority. And the second election cycle in 88, I guess it was 1988, he was from Eugene, Oregon, and he'd been the minority leader for forever, and waiting to get to be speaker, hopefully, take over. And the year that year, there was a child in his district in Eugene that died at the hands of the foster care parents in one of those horrible cases, that we all splash across headlines periodically, and it rocked him to the core. And so, my background was in politics and basically in environmental stuff. And so I knew nothing about children and family issues at all, but I could see how shook he was. And so I said, well, maybe Larry, you might want to think about why don't we take a look here and see if there's something we could do while you have the power to do it, and maybe create a legacy for yourself of taking a look at this and see what we can look at the child protective system, what's going on, and see what we might do to, alter it so that the outcomes aren't like this.
Right.
And so he liked that idea. And so after the session was over, he created what he called the Children's Care Team and asked me so I managed it for him. And we hired my co-author. I didn't know her at all at the time, but we hired Robin Carr-Morse to be our consultant to the project. And we've ever since then been best friends. We forged our friendship in fire, believe me. And so at the time, she interviewed with him, and she said to him, now you got to shoot, and he was like this great big former 6'4" or 5" football player. He was right. like this, macho male, right? A great guy, but not intimidating. So anyway, she came in to interview him with him, and he wanted me in the meeting, so I was in the meeting with him. And she looked at him, and she sits up in her chair, and she says, do you know what? She says, now let me tell you something, Larry. If you hire me, you're going to get a perspective, and I'm not going to back away from it, and it's not going to be popular, and you just need to understand what I'm saying to you right now and agree to it, that if we don't begin at the very beginning and quit doing just nothing but intervening after everything's fallen apart, if we don't start at the beginning, we're never going to get anywhere. So I thought to myself, whew, she's got an attitude, talking to Larry about that. But, but then when I got into the middle of it, discovered, oh my God, there was nobody wanted to talk about the young ones. And so right. it was the whole system was designed around dealing with disaster, and there was almost no prevention at all and no listening for prevention. So she designed this study project, and I helped her. And she kept saying, Meredith, there's got to be research here. I just know stuff's going on, but we couldn't find any information other than the WIC study on WIC food data.
Oh, God.
And then the Perry preschool data, which was the precursor to Head Start, those two things, and that was it. And so at the end of that process in 92, I took a sabbatical, and that was the year I went to Harvard. And so while I was at Harvard, this is pre-internet, mind you, I had access to like 8 or 9 libraries across the campus. And so I got approval to do an independent study project in lieu of one class for the whole year, and did a collaborative paper with her as a non-Harvard. We had a wonderful advisor at the Wiener Center for Social Policy. And so we wrote this paper looking at the emerging research. And those days, it was the early 90s, it was the brain. It was all about the brain, and the emerging research in the brain. And so we wrote this 80-page thesis looking at the emerging research, and we wrote it in the context of violence because that's what everybody was talking about and worried about. And we had all of this stuff with drugs and,
yes,
you know, that whole thing going on. And so at the end of that year, Dr. David called me in, and he said, Robin, we went and met with him, and he said, you know, you guys, this paper is way too important to just sit on a shelf. You need to do something with this. So, you know, no clue. I mean, so then I got hired by the Graduate School of Journalism at Columbia to work with them on an 18-month half-time contract to work with them in the design of a program, graduate level program for people that were covering children in the news. So, so it was like a mid-career graduate program. So at that point, I said to Robin, you know, not any clue how to do it. I said, well, you know, maybe we should just write a book. So that was how it got started. It came out of, so we wrote the book that we couldn't find, and we wrote it from a policy perspective of the kinds of things that people in their own communities, talking to their own legislators, that they could use this information. So we made it as user-friendly as we could, steeped in science, very, very careful with the science, but also writing it in a way that people could understand it and engage in their hearts with it. So that's how the first book came to be. And so then and then the second book was much more scientific. It looked at the emerging research on the long-term impact of trauma on lifelong physical and mental health that came out of adverse child experience study.
I mean, we're adults, and I mean,
yeah,
I mean, like,
so then
it's real.
That looked at neurology, immunology, epigenetics, genetics, and neurobiology. So it looked at all these different endocrinology. It looked at all these different systems, physical systems, and the impact of early trauma on lifelong development of those fundamental systems. So then when Newtown happened, our publisher asked us if we talked with them, and they wanted to know if we could do an update. At that point, Ghosts it's still in print.
It's still in print, yeah. It's still available.
23 years now, something like that, 22, 23 years. And so they asked, you know, we worked with them and did an update and incorporated a lot of the science and learning that we'd gotten out of the second book back, and redid the first book and incorporated the new science and information into that. So that was how we did a second book, and that was published in 2013, I think.
I think you said 2013. I was just like, oh my God, she's an author.
Yeah.
Yes. And now you were telling me, can we talk about the potential of the third book?
Yeah, we're still not sure on that. So I'm not ready to make any announcements, but the data coming out of the complete horrific disparity in outcomes amongst the Black population is, you know, I mean, for me, it shouldn't even be really surprising to any of us, but the scope of it was just like, you're looking at the state and you're going, oh my God, there is no running from this puppy.
There's no running from it.
There is no hiding from this.
There's no hiding from it. It's.
I'm not sure exactly where this is going to go, but we're toying with it. I'll say that at this point.
Right. Yes. So a few more questions, and then I'm gonna let you go because I know you got a day still ahead of you. So at 75, how are you keeping yourself active and engaged, girl? I mean, you're looking good, your skin looks good, your hair looks good. Like, how are you doing it? Like,
But I told you to start. I know you had to say that about my hair. I've given myself my second haircut a few days ago. So, so thank you for the compliments, but
yes.
especially the back. You're not looking at the back, which is probably a good thing because I can't see there. And maybe that's better than the front. I don't know,
Great.
But anyway, yeah, I keep myself, I would say that I keep myself grounded from despair by the kinds of stuff that I'm doing here in Fresno, and inspired so by the people that are here, the things that people are doing, the level of collaboration, feeling that I can make a difference even in a small way here in actual lives and the way things are playing out here, and looking to see beyond this, like what are we going to build in place that we're not going to lose. So thinking about those kinds of things and how to, so instead of going to the, oh my God, oh dear, all the running around, it's more like, what is there to learn? What can we put in place? So being a voice for looking at that and feeling like we'll lose some of it obviously, but there's some things that are going to be in place and they're not going to go away.
Right.
Or if they do go away, there'll be iterations of them that will remain with us. And so I'm hoping we can hang on to those good parts. So no, so for me, if I wasn't doing the stuff that I'm doing, I would be in a state of despair. So it's like, for me, creating, being proactive, reaching out, listening, trying to, really calling out what's great in other people, being the person that listens for greatness and acknowledges greatness, acknowledges good ideas, really want to listen to create space for people to say whatever it is they want to say. So those kinds of things, to me, it's kind of training. You and I have done all this work that we've done with Landmark.
Yes.
Is being a person that you get straight with what's so, and then you deal with that. What's so is what's so, and what's so is what's so. But then in the face of that, what else is there? What are the choices? What can we bring? Who can we call on? What's missing? What do we do to provide it? That keeps me grounded. And then I've got my family close by. So I can't see anybody or go anywhere, but my family lives a mile away, and, we can go out, and I have a nice backyard now. And so I just got a croquet set.
Oh,
so, yeah. And so I can sit off in one little corner and they come over with the two dogs, and so I get to see them from time to time, not all that often. They're pretty careful. And then my daughter comes every week and drops my groceries and, that kind of stuff. So staying connected to them.
Right.
And then thinking about what I can provide to support her, which I, do from time to time.
Yes.
Yeah, the little dog drives the big dog crazy. So I do some dog sitting sometimes with Miss Willow, whom I call Miss Piggy. She comes to my house so that Jack can have a break. The Labrador can have a break from the pit bull. Yeah. So yeah. Anyway.
Oh my God. Well, this has been so incredible because, because it's just amazing because, number one, all the things that you've done to make a difference and make an impact in the communities in which you live in, that's one. Two, the fact that you recognize that there's disparity, racially in the justice system, just in the systems period, and you're out to do something for that. Three, you're also setting an example for your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren to follow, such that your grandson is, started a environmental movement in Fresno, right? He just didn't wake up one day and go, oh, I'm going to start an environmental movement. Must have got that from grandma, right? And then, you know, when you look at the fact that you're in your 70s and you're still giving back, you're still moving, you're still making a difference, raising a voice, speaking for those that can't be heard. Like, I don't think people get like that's inspiring, right? And that's what the show is about. It's like giving, hopefully somebody watching this will, you know, recognize that if they're 65, there's something they want to do, they can look to you. Or if they're 35, and they can look to you and say, okay, well, I can start where I'm at. Because that's literally what you did. You just started where you were, and then you didn't stop. You haven't stopped.
Well, you just find out what interests you.
Right.
And you know, our big mentor, Werner Erhard, used to say, if you want to know what to do in the world, look around and see what needs doing, and then just do that.
Just do it.
And it's different for everybody. So, and it makes a difference because all of it together, I can't do it all. And so I'm very glad that other people are doing other things that are important, you know, and I'm fully supportive of that. So figure out where your heart is.
That is her takeaway for this, you guys. Figure out where your heart is and just take action. So what I'll do, Meredith's going to email me the information about getting involved with restorative justice.
Right.
And then she's also going to email me some other stuff.
I'll email you the newsletter. And by the way, if you want to send it on to people, they can click on to the very top and it's subscribed. There's no cost. So if you subscribe, it'll show up in your box every Monday from then on. And some of it will be Fresno, but a lot of it isn't. It's like a mixture, especially if you live in California. A lot of it's state.
Yes.
But the resources, a lot of those resources that are in the Resource Watch are national or available and usable anywhere. So anyway.
And it's vetted information, people.
Yeah, yes.
It's vetted.
It's vetted.
It is vetted. She's not just throwing stuff up there.
No.
She does not put her name on just anything. I can promise you that. She does not.
You're right.
Yes. All right. So Meredith, now if people wanted to get in touch with you, is it okay if people want to get in touch with you about tapping into resources or sharing resources or maybe any type of collaboration? Do you want to share your contact information? Or
Sure.
do you? Yeah.
I'm happy to talk to people.
Okay, good. So I'll put her contact information in the section of the video, so that way you guys can collaborate, because I think a lot of good is going to come out. And City of Fresno, if you're watching this video, you just had a huge advocate speak on behalf of the City of Fresno.
Well, nobody deserves it more than the City of Fresno and the people here. I'm telling you, Earl, I've never seen in all my 50 plus years of working on this kind of, I've never seen anything like what exists here. And it started before COVID, but COVID has completely pulled this.
Amplified it.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yes. All right, my queen.
Hey, thank you, sir. And I will send you some stuff. I'm also going to send you, because have you ever seen any of Chris Cohen's animal? Oh, I'm going to send you because of the computer thing you had with your printer.
Yes.
I'm going to send you Chris Cohen's cat with the printer. Okay. It'll make you laugh. So
knows I need a good laugh, child. I'm not gonna lie. I need.
Well, thanks for the time, Earl. I really appreciate it. And like I say, I knew the minute you open your mouth, oh, that guy's a keeper.
Oh my God! When we started Wisdom together, like I was just in such a totally different world, and just doing these videos is out of that recognizing, there is. And reconnecting back into the infinite, right? And that these videos are a way for me to give back and connect, and hopefully, I bring guests on that connect with the audience, and the guests and we say something that inspires and touches and get people to take action towards the attainment of their dreams and their goals. Like
the Jones version of oral histories.
Yes, exactly. This is the Earl Jones Show.
Mm-hmm.
And with that, we're going to stop recording.
Thank you. Bye.